Hi again. So now we are on elasticity of demand for goods and services. Let's look at an example of elastic demand. Suppose that a certain brand of PDAs, let's just maybe call them cell phones because we know what those are, goes on sale. If the price of that brand goes down 20% and the quantity demanded goes up 30%, then the demand is elastic because 30% is bigger than 20%. The percentage change in quantity demanded is greater than the percentage change in price. Goods that have a large number of substitutes fall into the elastic category, since if the prices change, consumers can just pick another product. Like, again, with cell phones, if you have, an iPhone and suddenly the price of an iPhone that's similar to some kind of Android phone goes up 20%, you might switch to Android or vice versa. Now think about a completely different type of good. The medicine insulin. Many diabetics require daily insulin injections to regulate their blood sugar levels. Even if the price of insulin were to rise sharply, diabetics would still need the same amount of insulin as they did before. If the price were to drop, they don't need more insulin because of a price drop. So if the price were to drop, they would not need any more insulin than the required dosage. As a result, the demand for insulin is inelastic because the quantity demanded remains relatively constant. Turn the page. Actually, before you turn the page, if you look at the quick reference, elasticity of demand is a measure of how responsive consumers are to price changes. In other words, how does demand change relative to a change in price? When there aren't any substitutes or something is a complete necessity, they tend to be inelastic because you gotta have them. Okay, next page. Over time, the elasticity of demand for a particular product may change. If more substitutes for a product become available, the demand may become more elastic. For example, the cost of cell phones and their service has become more elastic as more providers enter the market. On the other hand, in the case of prescription drugs, if a product is withdrawn from the market and there are fewer choices for the consumer, the demand may become inelastic. The data for elastic demand and the data for inelastic demand produce demand curves that look very different from each other. Okay, look at figure 4.13 and figure 4.14 below. Notice that the inelastic curve has a steeper slope than the demand curve does. The reason for this difference is that the changes along the vertical axis, the price, are proportionally greater than the changes along the horizontal axis, the quantity demanded. What? Okay, what that said is when you have elastic demand, there's a big change in demand. So it goes longer along the x-axis. So take a look at 4.13. You see how far from left to right that curve stretches? It goes pretty far. That represents elastic demand. If you look at 4.14, it only goes from like 20 to maybe 38 or something. So there's not a lot of change along the demand curve or the demand axis, the x-axis. So steeper slope equals inelastic. All right, I think we've got that down below the figures, the diagrams. Demand is said to be unit elastic when the percentage change in price and quantity demanded are the same. In other words, a 10% increase in price would cause exactly a 10% drop in quantity demanded, while the reverse would be true. Well, here's the thing. No good or service is ever really unit elastic. That's silly and doesn't happen. It's just used so that they can figure out if something's elastic or inelastic. Instead, unit elasticity is simply the dividing point between elastic and inelastic demand. It's a useful concept for figuring out whether demand is elastic or inelastic. And I'm going to pause so that this can be uploaded because, again, I don't know if it's my phone or YouTube, but it doesn't like big videos. So I'll pause here and then come back to read page 119.